With God, there is always more. More love, more life, more freedom. Welcome to Zoe's Exploring More with Michael Thompson. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "Our Heavenly Father has provided many delightful inns for us along our journey, but He takes great care to see that we do not mistake any of them for home." Join me and the team as we explore the kingdom together, discovering the deep truths and offering encouragement for the journey. There is always more. Welcome, friends and allies, to the Exploring More podcast. I'm Michael Thompson, and I'm with my friends S.J. Jennings, and we have our beautiful brides in the studio with us, the fabulous Sherry Jennings and the amazing Robin Thompson. And it's appropriate because this is the beginning of a 3-part series on the kingdom romance. And as we were looking at kind of our approach to Valentine's Day, which is not always an easy approach for the hearts of men and women. And it can be a very lonely time, it can be a sad time. It's considered one of the more lonely holidays, if it's indeed, is it a holiday? Is it really a holiday? Google puts it on my calendar, so it's something.
Hallmark says it
yeah,
is.
It's official.
Yeah,
There's
really.
something official about that. So, yeah, we wanted to explore that some more about romance, kingdom romance particularly. And then later in the series, part 2 and part 3, we're going to talk specifically about the kingdom romance and the feminine heart. And then the final chapter of the series will be the kingdom romance and the masculine heart. So, yeah, let's dive in, team. When you hear kingdom romance, just what do you think of? Where do you go? I want to bring some definition and clarity to this, but how does it land on you? Kingdom romance. What does it make you think of?
It's big and significant and more than we can imagine.
I think of Narnia and the coronation day
That's a good image.
and in the kingdom, kings and queens of Narnia, the belovedness and bestowing crowns on them, a weightiness, epic
Yeah, I thought the word epic, an epic story.
story.
Mhm.
Yeah.
If that was a subtitle of something, I'd give it a look. I'd watch the trailer. I would flip a few pages. A kingdom romance. It's not something that I would say I was overly familiar with until we started walking with God together, a little more than a decade ago, and it became more normal. It really,
Yeah, the great romance.
yes,
right?
the sacred romance
The
that we talked
sacred
with Gary
romance.
about several podcasts ago, and Brent Curtis and
Mm-hmm.
his authoring that book, The Sacred Romance. And yeah, kingdom romance. I know I wouldn't have associated that at one point with my faith in Christianity, but now I can't not. But I think you're right. There's an epic nature to it. You said, Sherry, something really large. It sounds
Significance.
big, significant. And that may be the kingdom part, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I want to talk about this whole idea of being caught up in a romance, being the object of the love and the affection of someone who is absolutely crazy in love with you. Wouldn't
Yeah.
you want to know who that person is, right?
Sure,
Mhm.
yeah. And what does that mean in a kingdom context, right? That doesn't mean flowers and candy, the way the world has said romance should be undertaken.
And yet there are gifts, there's
There are.
surprises, there's affectionate things. The romance kind of lands in a different category, SJ, for me than training or healing. I mean, it's all kind of bundled together in this incredible relationship that we're caught up in with God.
Mm.
But there's times when, affection and intimacy, there's some words that when God's romancing us, just showing us, telling us, and
Mhm.
offering to us a taste, an experience of how much He loves us. And those moments in my relationship with Robin, they feel different than when we're trying to get dinner ready or we're trying to get somewhere. I mean, there's other parts of our relationship that romance wouldn't describe that part of the day or a trip. And yet there's other things where we can experience God's healing, His training, His invitation to see some things that may not be good in us, that He wants us to stop living under, associating with the false self. And it's all out of love. But I think that's a different shape to this than romancing us, wooing us to Himself.
Michael, I think as you were sharing about that, the thing that landed on me was when I think about God, when I think about Jesus romancing me, He really doesn't want anything in return. When you talked about training, when you talked about God revealing things, whatever. Okay, that's a conversation that, when God's training me, there's an expectation that I'm going to respond to that I'm going to do something in response to that. When God is romancing me, I don't feel any expectation to do anything. I just can let him love me.
Yeah.
And I love that you said that, because when you first said kingdom romance, I'm thinking back to when I first heard that, and the pushback of my heart was, whoa. And I think it's because of the way the world has broken, at least for me, before walking in this, what romance is, that there is the expectation of you're pursuing me, you're romancing me because you want something.
Right.
Not just simply for the delight of knowing me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good thing.
That reminds me of my favorite quote from the Sacred Romance. It is a rare soul indeed who has been sought after for who she is, not because of what she can do or what others can gain from her, Sherry, like you said, but simply for herself. Can you recall a time when a significant someone in your life sat you down with the sole purpose of wanting to know your heart more deeply, fully expecting to enjoy what he found there?
Right. And that was a page turner for me. That helped me turn the corner when you said that at a deepening weekend. Because all of a sudden it made sense that God is a romancer, that he is the romancer, the pursuer of my heart.
Read that last part just a bit, the expectation. Because there was an expectation in there.
Fully expecting to enjoy what he found there.
So I think there is that caveat, not demanding something from me or an expectation of performance, but yet there is some kind of hope, some kind of wild hope of God that we would respond. I think about the story I tell about Disney World and walking down the Main Street in Disney World when the girls were younger, but not too young. They were teenagers. So it's a really weird time in a boy or girl's life, especially when mom and dad and the dynamic of that. So anyway, the story was, I heard God whisper to me to reach out and hold Ashley's hand, grab her hand, hold Ashley's hand. I'm kind of like, I don't know, God. I don't want to, really?
She doesn't seem to really like me at the moment,
and the idea is, we haven't done that in a long time.
Right.
And so my point is, I responded in a faithfulness to God's prompt, and I reached out and grabbed Ashley's hand like you would, you're not breaking stride, but I just kind of reached over and touched her hand. And so there was a hope, maybe an expectation of rejection or acceptance. It's going to be one or the other. And when she reached back, at 15, grabbed my hand, squeezed it. So romance does offer something, but it's hopeful for something in return.
Yeah, there's an opportunity for rejection there as
but
the
I know
one that is pursuing.
So somewhere in there, the word matters, expectation. But I think there is this
desire,
this hope, desire, this wanting that romance carries with it.
Sure.
Because honestly, a kingdom romance is between two hearts. It's between two people. It's between our God and us, every man and every woman, every boy and every girl. So there's something about it that we were made for, and there's something about it that he's inviting in. I like the word wooing us to.
Yeah. Yeah, the Trinity, we know the Trinity shares that affection and mutual exchange of delight, and we were made for that, to participate in that as well.
In the image of that and for that. I missed that in Sunday school and church.
No,
I'm sure it was described in some way, but I missed the idea of an invitation into a romance with the Trinity.
No, it wasn't ever said.
Okay.
I never heard it in all my years. Neither did you until about 10 years ago.
Yeah, 15,
15 years ago.
So just as an aside, why do you think that is? Why is it not talked about? I mean, Sherry, you kind of hinted at romance from God. That's a little weird. What makes that weird? Why is it not taught? Why is it not talked about, do you think?
Well, I think it's one of the greater crimes that the enemy has created in our faith journey, in our Christianity, where, as you guys were describing, romance involves a story. Romance involves a narrative. Romance involves something epic. And we'll talk more about how we see that. I really had more of a Christianity, what I was experiencing growing up and into my 30s even, was a Christianity that was more academic. It was more like science than it was, poetry or literature.
Arts.
Those kind of classes. Yeah, art.
Mm-hmm.
It was more of a science. It was more of an algebra. It was more like that. And I think for my own sake, breaking free from that, breaking out of that and into a romance. And when we talk about through this series, I hope that we can share it in a way, not sell it, but share it in a way where maybe you haven't seen it that way before,
Right.
friends. Maybe this is an alteration for you to step out of, I think, of Dorothy in the black and white and into this vivid color. The Psalms are full of it. And I think when we start to bring the narrative back to the Gospels, as I've been working on this new book, I am amazed at the narrative of the story and the illustrations that they bring to, if you were shooting a scene, the director would say, action, and then here comes the hero. And here comes the woman who has these men who are about to throw rocks at her. What was the tension in that moment if it was captured in a narrative, in a story? So we quickly try to go towards the story and pull the academic out of the story,
Yeah, make it less romantic.
And it gets to be sterilized to a degree. And it's not that those points and those, quote, truths aren't true, but when you pull it out of the story,
the context and the color is lost, and emotion
and something
and heart
is lost.
Yes.
And so to have this ingredient put back into your gospel or into your faith journey with God is to bring a flavor and a color to, that can change everything. That's good.
And it speaks to experience, because the knowing, you talked about more an academic, cerebral knowing. I think it's Paul who talks in the New Testament, and that know is nosko in Greek. It really means to experience, to know God in that way by experiencing him. And that changes everything when we get to experience his goodness and his kindness. And when we actually experience him coming for us and hear him speaking to us and see what he's up to and the reality of our lives.
Yeah, I am ready to go on a campaign for the other side of this coin. And the campaign I'm on is love is a feeling.
Right. And that's what I was just going to say is I think a lot of this was the diminishing of the heart. If our hearts are wicked and romance is somehow connected to our hearts, then how on earth are we going to experience some of what Robin was describing?
Yeah,
that's good.
The experiences aren't as significant. The feelings aren't as significant as what we intellectually know.
I wonder too if to your point, Sherry, the diminishment of the idea that we can have a healed, healthy, whole heart the way God intended versus a wicked heart. The idea that Jesus is romancing us is pretty scandalous.
A little bit.
I mean, there's scandal there. I mean, they killed him for the scandal of it.
Yeah, we don't have time in this series there's some great side trails there.
Yeah.
And I think for our listeners who are new to us, you may want to look at some of the other titles. I think about the heart and the sacred romance with Gary. I mean, we're talking about kingdom romance particularly, but there's some other podcasts that I'd invite our listeners to go and explore that dive a little more into the good heart and why we believe what we believe regarding the heart, and that we're given a new heart and we're given a new identity. We're given the equipment actually to be in this love affair, to carry our side of it. I mean, it's pretty clear we're invited to love him back, but he loves most. He loves fiercely. So this is a good place to take a break. And then I want to jump back in and we'll bring some more definition and clarity to romance. Thanks for joining us on the Exploring More podcast. We'll be back in just a second with more Kingdom Romance.
Hey, Exploring More podcast listeners, I just wanted to bring your attention to our annual conference called the Heart of a Warrior Encounter. It's our weekend conference initiative designed to take a man into his deep heart and intimate encounters with God. Time away with God is critical to healing, training, becoming more. And our main themes align with material found in John Eldridge's books, Robert Lewis's Men's Fraternity, Neil Anderson's Victory Over the Darkness, and the teachings of C.S. Lewis, Dallas Willard, A.W. Tozer, and other great faculty members of our hearts. All created to take a man further up and further in to the life that God offers. During the weekend, we have three main objectives: help a man get his heart back, teach him how to fight, and show him where the battles are. To see Christ come for a man's heart and what God is up to in validating a man, initiating him, and calling him into the larger story is truly a glorious thing. It is a fierce journey for every man, but one that desperately needs to be taken. I want to encourage you to join the squadrons of men who are hungry and thirsty for more. The kingdom needs more men who know what it is to walk deeply with God. Come with us and be one of the men who is seeking and finding more. Visit www.zoe.org/events for more information about the Heart of a Warrior encounter. The dates are March 21st through March 24th, Thursday to Sunday, 2019, and we hope you'll join us. Hope we'll see you there. Welcome back, listeners, to the Exploring More podcast. We're talking about kingdom romance today, and we've got myself, Michael, and our brides, Sherry, my lovely wife, and Robin, Michael's lovely wife. It's nice to have feminine hearts and feminine perspective here on the Explore More podcast today.
I've noticed already that we move a little slower and we go a lot deeper when the girls are with us, which
Probably true.
is something is important in that discovery or that observation for me. So,
a woman's heart is deep waters.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. All right, deep waters. Give me some more words in word association definition. Best J, you looked it up. So in the dictionary, here's what romance is defined as in the dictionary. And I want us to add some of our own color to this, but here's a starting place. From the dictionary, it says, a noun, a feeling of excitement and mystery associated with love. A quality or feeling of mystery, excitement, and remoteness from everyday life. That last one really struck me. Did you hear that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it struck me too.
I love the words mystery. Yes, there's a feeling of excitement. I think love carries with it a sensing, a perceiving. There's a feeling that, like I said in the first part of the podcast, that love is a feeling. Decisions feel like something. Your will exercised feels like something to do or not do, to engage, to not engage. And so to enter into a romance, and I think to enter into this love affair with God, we're going to, like you said earlier, Robin, we're going to feel that it's going to impact us in some ways that we could talk about or tangible. But this last part, and I think there's a mystery in talking about that, as the definition said, but this last phrase, a remoteness from everyday life, it's in the dictionary around romance. So I think back to our first half of the conversation, that implies that it's rare. That implies that it's not a part of the mundane day-to-day.
Yeah, it's a break from the routine.
This everyday life, right, doesn't have.
But could it?
And I think that's the conversation we're here for, a series of three podcasts, but could it? But
I would hope it could. That's what I think we're saying, or what we're wanting to live in that place, and from that place, experiencing romance with our Father, God.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to break away from everyday life and to be caught up in a great romance, it ought not be rare.
The exception.
It ought to be the opportunity of the norm. Yeah.
What we enjoy ongoing.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
And it's an invitation, that awakening, that having the eyes to see the romance, even in the everyday.
Mm-hmm.
Because God is in every moment. But do we see him in it? Do we know?
Yeah.
So let's bring it down to earth for a second. Sherry, when you send me a text message in the middle of the day and, there's heart emojis and winky faces and all that kind of deal, right? Which you may want to edit that out, Serena, because it sounds weird for me to say winky face.
I don't know that I've ever used a winky face.
Well, either way. So you send me something like that.
I use winky faces. I like the winky guy. What's wrong with the winky guy?
It just sounds weird when I said it. Anyway, but when you send me a message like that, and usually you're a great encourager, so you say, "Hey, you've got what it takes," or "I love the way that you fight for myself and others," and it's a pause in the middle of my day. It breaks out of the routine. So I'm working, I'm doing whatever it is I'm doing, and I'm immersed in that, and I get this little taste of romance. I get this little
invasion,
little chocolate, sweetness in the middle of the day, and it breaks me out of the mundane. It breaks me out of my routine. So what does it look like then for that to happen with God, right? In the context of the kingdom romance.
And our day-to-day and the challenges of chores and things that need to be done. And, we've all subscribed a while back to the context of our story is a great romance, a great love affair set in the midst of a fierce battle. So that love letter from time to time when you feel like you're in a foxhole just kind of hanging on, or you're just kind of doing the chores and you get that reminder from God somehow, some way. What do those reminders feel like, look like, sound like? Because they are an experiential proposition. That's what we want our listeners to know, that the romance is not just theory and topic. It is experiential, and there's ways in which we have experienced God romancing us. Winky faces, emojis, however, because what I love about that, what you brought up about that, what I want to challenge our listeners to perceive, and maybe even just give a little bit of space to, do you think, SJ, that the emojis coming from Sherry are only coming from Sherry?
Right. They come from Sherry's heart that is settled and pointed towards God. And so because of that, she can love me well.
So God can work with Sherry, through Sherry. I don't believe use is the good word for romance. I think the good word is partner with Sherry to deliver an emoji to your heart. And it's a 2 for 1, 2 to 1. And I think that's how you can start to perceive more and more of God in the great romance, that he will partner with people to deliver good things to your heart at good times, to encourage you, to validate you, sometimes initiate you, but to especially, just like we would, to let you know that he is fond of you. He sees you.
Yeah.
He wants you.
Yeah.
And that you're not alone. And so that's where I get, like you said earlier, Sherry, I think, unfortunately, when God goes so anonymous, it's really not God being anonymous. It's us not seeing God's hand, God's work, God's gift, God's voice, God's way of romancing us.
And it's learned. I think we learn how to do that. And it's kind of baby steps at first. And it's asking him. One of the things that I've started doing is in the mornings, just asking God where I sit down with my coffee in my little space in my room upstairs and look out and watch the sunrise and say, okay, Jesus, where do you want to go today? Where do you want to go this morning? What do you want to show me? What do you want to say? Where do you want to go? And sometimes my eyes will fall on a verse. Sometimes it's something I read in a blog or it's a song. Yesterday when I was looking at these notes, thinking about kingdom romance and thinking about what does that look like? What is that like for me? What have I been invited into in that kingdom romance place, that epicness that we were talking about? And so I was just thinking about that. And then I went downstairs in the kitchen to make my smoothie and I looked at my worship playlist. I was going to play a song and I was like, okay, Jesus, what do we play? My eyes fell on Shane and Shane, you're beautiful. You are beautiful. And it's talking about Jesus being beautiful. It's us singing it to him. And I just felt compelled to play that. And so I'm playing that. And the words were, when we arrive at eternity's shore, where death is just a memory and sins are no more, we'll enter in as the wedding bells ring. Your bride will come together and we'll sing, you're beautiful. I see your face, you're beautiful. And it was just a beautiful thing that Jesus did for my heart in just seeing that, his response to where he wants to take us, and a glimpse of him pursuing me.
It's beautiful.
It's a really important expectancy.
Yeah. And when
we're
you
back to
see
that word again, and how do we use that word for our benefit here versus the heaviness of expectation, meeting somebody's demands versus hope.
And delight.
And that I would be delighted in, that I'm delightful, that the creator of the universe wants from me, and it's me.
With expectation comes the potential that you're going to not meet someone's expectations, right? That's why, it's better to use the word that God is hopeful, that God is longing,
waiting, wanting,
desiring.
wanting, us.
Exactly, desiring. But you said something really great, Robin. You have to be able to see it. Maybe the first step in recognizing and understanding kingdom romance is, okay, how do I see it?
Does it exist?
What's in the way of me seeing it? What's in the way of me believing that was a love note from God to you?
Yeah.
You know, what
good.
would be in the way of me believing that that's true?
Right.
So entering into that process is key.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great fork in the road. God, is there a great romance? Would you romance me?
Right. Give
You
me
know?
eyes to see it and ears to
Sounds like
hear
a
when you
vulnerable
do.
prayer.
Mm-hmm.
It is a
To me.
vulnerable prayer because the questions that might come to your mind, you know, am I lovable? Am I
Right.
worth romancing
Pursuing,
and
right,
being
right.
pursued?
So let's
So
go.
those are all telling
Am I worthy?
things.
Yeah, let's go to these
Am I
words.
worthy of
Okay,
your
yeah, we're
pursuit?
moving there. I'm just going to officially transition us to these things that you're now describing what romance looks and feels like. These other words, being pursued, you know, worthiness. I mean, all the great stories, there tends to be somebody who's in love first and wanting to romance to win the heart of another.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many stories like that. Yes, there can be love at first sight. We love those stories as well. But there seems to be somebody pursuing, and then it dawns on the other, they love me. They're in love with me, and they can be reciprocal. They can offer their heart too. And I love that. That's our story. He loves us first. He loves us most. He's pursuing us and wanting us to enter in. What are some of the other words and the things that you associate with romance? One of them I had is candles. There's got to be a candle from time to time, you know? I mean, or a sunrise or a sunset. You know, there's something about light and romance.
Fire in the fireplace.
Candlelight dinners. Oh my gosh, fireplaces, warmth. Yeah, those
Right,
are
Sherry? Warmth,
those are really
sunshine.
those are romance tools, romance components. What else?
Flowers.
Yeah, beauty.
Beauty, yeah.
Yeah, we got to talk about beauty in
Color.
the next podcast.
Yeah, why
for sure.
specifically flowers, though?
Because they're pretty and they're not every day, especially in the wintertime.
That's
There's
a
just
great.
something about, you know,
It's a great example of the scientific reason for flowers could be pollen for bees. Now that's not that romantic,
Right.
but why didn't God just create a tube and there it is? Why so many colors?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember science? Photosynthesis. It's a great word, and it's how the sun hits it and the flower will move towards it, but it still doesn't describe the beauty of a flower and how we
how our hearts respond to
respond to those. Yeah, to be given a flower,
it. Yeah.
to be given a silly rose, to be given that kind of beauty as an expression, that gift. That's a good one. What else?
I think romance, for me, I've already kind of hinted at it, but
It's emojis. We know. Okay.
It's emojis. It's winky faces. Yeah. And for me, I think it's affirmation. And, you know, we can get more into this in the masculine heart and romancing the masculine heart. But, you know, the affirmation that Sherry gives to me, again, you've got what it takes. You know, you're
Yeah.
a mighty warrior king. You're doing great. I love watching you. When she says stuff like that to me, it's like getting a dozen roses. It's like, it's romancing me
Yeah.
and romancing my heart.
That's Ashley's. Ashley is a girl and a woman, and that's her
She needs that
love
affirmation
language.
too.
Oh,
Sure.
words of
Words of
affirmation.
affirmation, yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, flowers not so much, but words of affirmation are huge
Yeah,
for her heart.
There's certain instruments too. So when you were talking about music, I want to bring that into romance. You know, there's certain songs. You know, trumpets aren't usually in my romantic lane. There's something else, a battle cry maybe, or, you know, something epic in a film score or soundtrack. But man, when you get violins going,
Mm-hmm.
violins just have a
Piano.
haunting. I believe today, I don't know that it's fair to say more than ever, but the worship songs that we're experiencing and enjoying are far more romantic than, and again, maybe it may be me waking up to more and more romance this last decade or so, but oh my gosh, the worship songs that Hillsong and Bethel and who are some of the others
Jesus
that
culture.
they're putting
Yeah.
out are romantic
Yeah.
in their way.
Carrie Job.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Because they're tender and they're vulnerable and they're inviting.
those are great
It's
qualities.
safe. And you
Mm,
just feel safe to be
yeah,
vulnerable, to just surrender in the midst of them.
Mhm.
yeah. To be delighted in. There's something about romance too. It moves slowly. There's more stillness. There's more gazing.
There's more presence.
Right.
Mhm.
You're present.
You're,
Yeah.
That's
you're
true.
more present. When you're being romanced or trying to romance,
Yeah.
Mhm.
there's presence involved. And, you know, usually there's no screens on
Yeah.
anywhere,
Mhm.
right?
There's intentionality.
You know, yeah, everybody's phones are put away, the TV's off.
Yeah. It
you know.
really sets the table for some deeper conversations.
Yeah.
some more vulnerable conversations, some questions that they just don't happen in the drive-through. They tend to happen on candlelight and that kind of slowing down. You had thoughts?
Well, just going back to the word mystery and how it's not necessarily a mystery to be solved, but one to enjoy, to pursue,
to enter into
over a long period of time. I mean, I think about we've been together almost 30 years, and there's so much I know about you, but there's so much I don't. There's so much more to explore of your heart in that mystery. And then, being invited into or being awakened to the kingdom romance. Gosh, as much as I thought I knew about God, I realize how much I don't know and how much more there is that I'm being invited into his heart.
And how he loved me at 25 is a little different than at 54 now. I mean, I'm in a very different stage in the masculine journey. And, I have journals and records and memories of really beautiful times where God, especially like you said, Rob, in these last 15 years, where that began to shift for me, and seeing the sacred romance, seeing the kingdom romance, being open to it, and then enjoying it more and more. It's just become more and more and more true to be delighted in at this stage in my life still, to be in a friendship with God that has a romantic slant on it, where he's not only fathering me, but he is in love with me. That's a great word versus God loves you.
Right.
And that's a good word too.
It sounds and feels
but
very
it
different.
feels deeper to me to say he's in love with you and so longs for you to be in love with him. I wanted to call you out, Robin, on how has God romanced you through Nat Geo? Because there's something about images and pictures. It's another way. I think it's another landscapes and views, but you found ways to go see what God might have for you in your feed, in your lineup, things you've subscribed to that bring beauty and nourish your heart in a romantic way.
Nat Geo, meaning National Geographic on Instagram. That's one of the accounts I follow for the beauty and for what it invites me to see of God and his creation and absolute incredible beauty and images that I wouldn't otherwise be able to see. And it has invited me to pay attention more when I'm outside. I look at the sky more. I look at cloud formations more. I notice colors. I notice the stars. And I also have a daughter who loves the moon and stars and the ocean and the animals in it. And Abby has broadened my awareness of those things and how God comes to her in those ways, in those places of beauty in nature. It's amazing. You see the heart of God and the artist that he is.
If you'll slow down. I mean, 55, 65, 80 miles an hour on the interstate, you're just not going to take that much in. But if you can walk in nature, if you can break away and put yourself in a space from time to time, that's exactly what that definition, and remoteness from everyday life, where nothing has to be cleaned up or wiped up, nothing needs to be fixed or done, but can be experiencing and encountering creation. I think creation has a romantic soundtrack that plays if we'll enter into it and bring our hearts to that other gear. We live in fourth and fifth. Romance seems to take place in second and third.
Or neutral.
Or stillness. Or stillness. Yeah, exactly.
Michael, I was reminded of the thing that I'm kind of hearing over and over again is that we're romanced by these little things. It's an Instagram account. It's a emoji. It's not a big production, flowers. It's not a huge thing. And what came to my mind as Robin was sharing, Michael, I was reminded the first time I think I recognized that those little things are romantic gestures from God because he's in love with me. We were on mission somewhere together. I don't know where. And we weren't really sure what was going to be served for breakfast. And they brought out French toast. And you said, that was for me. I don't know if you know that, but that was for me.
300 guys eating French toast, but it was for me.
Yeah. And I said, what do you mean that was for you?
Yeah.
What did you tell the chef? Or
Yeah.
And you said, no, God knows I love French toast. Yeah. And he brought it out for me.
Surprised me.
Yeah.
And there was bacon.
And there was bacon.
I remember that time. We were at Rockbridge at one of the Heart of Warrior Encounter
Is that
weekends.
right?
And, I don't know what the menu is. I mean, we facilitate these weekends. And it has an association with my dad.
Mm-hmm.
That was a lot of Saturday morning breakfast that my dad would make French toast for me and my brothers. And so there's an affectionate association. There's a connection with that.
Mhm.
And so I knew my dad wasn't in the kitchen, but my Heavenly Father is in charge of the menu, man.
I would just remember that was pretty early on in my journey and thinking, wait, God can love me through French toast?
Mm. Mm.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. That's
he,
good.
He romances us through things he knows that we love.
That's good.
And he made us that way. He wired us that way. And then he meets us there
Yeah.
and just hopes that we see it and hopes that we get it. I remember when Ashley was turning 12 and my parents took her and the other sisters, all three girls, on a Disney cruise. And Ashley was just starting to be awakened to things of God. And she knew that when she was born, Pachelbel Canon in D was played in the birthing room
Yeah,
when she was
delivery
born
room, I
in the
remember.
delivery room. And
Yeah,
that
we
has
told her that.
always,
Mhm.
we told her that. And so she,
It
her
was a
ears,
focal point. It was a focal song.
right,
It
for
was-
me.
Yeah.
And so she knows that. And whenever she hears that song, which is rare, she's like, oh, listen, Mom, and tells me about it. Well, on the Disney cruise, if any of you have ever been on a Disney cruise, you'll know they play nothing but Disney music.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing but Disney music.
There's a lot of it. Yeah.
And on Ashley's birthday, my parents took her to the nice restaurant on the ship. And as they were bringing out her dessert for her birthday, Pachelbel Canon in D started to play. No one told them to. It just started to play. And you cannot convince Ashley otherwise that it was not Jesus telling her, I see you and I love you.
Yeah.
And that started the next 13 years of that journey for Ashley, looking for ways that her father was showing her, I love you, I see you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. Kingdom romance is real, and kingdom romance is yours. We believe that, and we want that for all of our friends and all of our allies, and want to invite you to some more of this conversation as we're just getting started. There'll be part 2 and 3 as we talk about the feminine heart and romance, and then the masculine heart and romance over the next couple weeks. We're glad you joined us. And if you have any questions or concerns or comments, where can they reach us, SJ?
Exploring more at zoe.org. I was thinking about that, Robin, as you were sharing that story about Ashley. I'm wondering if maybe there aren't listeners who are saying, I've never experienced that. I don't even know what that means. And we would love to point to some resources that might help you on that journey. So shoot us an email, exploringmore@zoe.org.
Yeah, we got a lot of other things that you can look at on the website at zoe.org. A lot of free stuff, audio downloads, and different things that for your heart, we want to make as much of that available as often as we can. So thanks for joining us on the Exploring More podcast. We'll see you next week as we continue the kingdom romance conversation and explore more. We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Exploring More. The landing page for this podcast is zoe.org/podcast. That's ZOWEH.org/podcast, where you can find the show notes and various platforms to which we broadcast. You can also find us and the Life of More by visiting Zoe on YouVersion Bible app, Right Now Media, our Facebook page, and Zoe on Instagram and Twitter. Remember, with God there is always more, and you were made for more.